Welcome everybody. It's good to see all your faces again. And Joshua, thank you very, very much for joining us today. Really looking forward to it. Everyone's got their respective martinis.
I'm going to pour mine as you speak.
Get it going. But I think what we'll do first is just go around and introduce ourselves, I guess, as much for anyone who's not joined us before, and for Josh's benefit as well. I'll start. So my name's Tom Gabb. I've worked in the spirits industry now for probably like 13, 14 years. I was a bartender for about 10 years, and then I went into brand work after that. Worked with pretty much every spirit, almost going out there now. But my primary focus really is whiskey. I really enjoy whiskey. So yeah, Will.
Well, I'm Will. Thank you, Tom. I've been working in the bar industry for the last 10 or so years. I've had the pleasure of working with two of the lovely people on the call. Three of them is me. So I'm still working behind the bar. I'm managing a small little cocktail bar in Brighton, and yeah, just going to be doing it. I'm a massive whiskey fan, but also just I always forget about, a massive gin fan as well. I like straight and rock. So I'm going to pass it down to Joshua.
Yep. Hello, my name's Josh. I currently work at the Plymouth Gin Distillery, bartender there at the Blackfriars Distillery, where we create Plymouth Gin. Been in the industry for nearly about 8 years. Obviously, big fan of gin with my job, but it's pretty much like being a bartender. Most spirits, absolutely love. Anyway, there's not really one I dislike, if I'm quite honest.
Perfect. And Elaine, just for anyone who hasn't met you, which is almost impossible.
Yeah, I'm Elaine. I've worked in the bar industry for about 12 years now. Currently working with Will and Tom with Drink With Us. My normal job, which I'm furloughed from at the moment, is I'm a key account manager for a drinks distribution agency. Yeah, bartended in Brighton for about 10 years, so I know most of definitely the cocktail bartenders around the place. And yeah, again, I'm like Josh, I'm a fan of most spirits. So very happy to be here and very happy to have Josh talking to us from Plymouth. Thanks, Josh.
Elaine, I will say personally, you're almost impossible to walk down the street with, because they have to say 1,000 times to say hello to everyone. So,
I think that about you, but
oh really? Oh, yeah. Compliment. Oh, it makes me blush. Cool. Okay. We've all got different martinis, I believe. I think there won't be two alike. So maybe be interesting to go back round and say what martini we've got, because martinis will be the subject of conversation today for the most part. I have opted for a very poorly glassed martini, but as you can see, there's some frosting on the glass, but it's dirty as hell, which is the way I like it. So yeah, lots of olives, very dirty. I've been using this, which is lovely, which is actually gin from a whiskey distillery, from the micro distillery at Middleton. It's got black lemon and Irish gorse flower in there. So that was really tasty. It's got like huge juniper punch. So, because like when I first tried it, I thought like it's kind of citrusy, it'll go well with citrus, but turns out it goes well with olive wine as well. So what are you drinking, Will?
I've gone for a kind of slightly classic martini. I've gone with a 6-to-1 ratio of that, and I say it's classic. Like it's a 6-to-1 ratio, but I've used sweet vermouth, sort of like a Bianco, using Plymouth Gin in there. I got that, and then we just got like a big old orange snap on the side, mainly because I like it slightly sweeter. And when I went to the shops, I forgot to pick up lemons, so I don't have any lemons. Yeah, I'll show that to Josh.
I love that. It's like I like it when it's sweeter, and also complete necessity.
Yeah, and I don't have the things.
Yeah, which is kind of like I've invented so many more ways to drink what I like being at home, just because I haven't had the ingredients, so something else has got to like make up for it, basically. Yeah, cool. And Josh, yourself?
So I've gone for a basically a 5-to-1 Plymouth Gin Martini, but instead of using vermouth, I've gone for Lillet. And then also, technically, it's a Gibson because I've done some homemade pickled onions at home. So you put a nice pickled onion in there as well.
And Elaine?
So I'm very lucky because I have my Plymouth bottle with all the different types of martinis marked out for me. I've gone with the dry, which is 10-1. I can show you very quickly, I think. You've got, I don't know if you can see, oh, that's the gimlet. Hang on.
Oh, very nice.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
So it's marked out there with where to put your water, where to put your vermouth, and where to put your Plymouth. So I quite like it. And there's definitely more than one martini in it because I've got that left.
Yes.
And the great thing is you bung it all in there. You've put your water in as well, so you don't need to stir it over ice, stick it in the fridge, and just drink it whenever you want. It's very, very handy.
I think something that's super interesting is what we've all done there is we've used a lot of words, and it's this kind of thing, and it's almost something that makes the martini feel a little bit more exclusive, but I think is super interesting. And as we've got Josh on, probably spread a bit of light on it, just because obviously working at the bar at Plymouth as well, is ordering a martini. What are your basics? What's your basic explanation of like the lexicon, and what should you expect from the bartender when you're ordering a martini as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that I always say to people, a martini, it is such a simple drink, but because it's so simple, sometimes it can be made complicated. So the most easiest thing I always encourage is for when our guests come into the bar, I always recommend, that they tell us exactly how they like their martini. It's a big learning curve, and it's all about teaching them what they like. But for example, if you were allergic to food and you go to a restaurant, you'd say, oh, I can't have this because of my dietary requirements. It's almost exactly the same as a martini. You should say exactly how you like it. There's nothing wrong with that. People may think, oh, that person's maybe being a bit pretentious, but that's how they want their drink. But what it's doing is it's not creating an error, room for error for the bartender. So, for example, like you come in, find out what gin the bar has, for example. Then say, for example, let's say Plymouth, we go to have Plymouth gin. Could I have, what vermouth do you have? Do you have Nolly Prat? Do you have Dolin de Chambry, Lillet, whatever? And then ask what vermouth you'd like, to what ratio, for example. Obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about ratios in a bit, but really discuss, what ratio you'd like for the bartender to make it. And then also what garnish. And then that way, it makes no room for error for the bartender to go, yes, Tom, you like, a 5-1 martini with Nolly Prat. Perfect. That's easy. I can make that. And you want 11 zest, but discarded and not in there.
Very nice, man. Like, one thing that I just wanted to hit a beat on quickly was is just kind of everyone's favorite vermouth. And also, Josh, you made the distinction earlier that you weren't using vermouth, you were using Lillet.
Yes.
And I think that's something that not a lot of people talk about. And there's kind of like an interesting sort of like tidbit behind that, which is obviously the reason it's kind of not vermouth. So what's the difference and why do you prefer it?
Yep. So the vermouth that I prefer, preferably, to be honest, I think no matter what gin you like, if you like, you can all like different gins with our martinis. I think it's all about finding the right vermouth to the gin. So each gin is going to be different with each vermouth. For example, if I'm having Plymouth, I'll have either Nolly Prat or Dolin de Chambry, just because it complements some of the tasting notes. The difference between Lillet, so vermouths we know are made with wormwood, but Lillet is actually known as a keener. So it's made, so instead of using wormwood, it's actually using quinine. So exactly the same as what goes into tonic. Lillet is made up of 80% of Bordeaux wines from France. Obviously, it's Bordeaux, France. So it's a little bit more sweeter. It's a little bit more lighter. It's more of almost like if you think of a dessert wine, like a muscat, you kind of get those kind of similar notes in with Lillet.
Man, I mean, I'm going to get an absolute beating from work for saying this. I love Lillet, okay? I just let me put it on the record. I love Lillet. I love it in spritzes and all the rest of it. I drink it cold or whatever. but I don't usually put it in a martini. I mean, for me, and I mean, Will and Elaine, you both run the same bar, so I'm sure you had a house vermouth there. But I like Nolly Pratt. Like, and maybe it's just because it's the first one I had. Like, I know it was the one that I first had with a martini, you know. But for sure, that's my favorite. But what did you guys serve at Valentino's?
We were Noilly Pratt for quite a long time, and then we switched to Gancia for a short time. That is a Spanish vermouth, as far as I know, unless somebody wants to fact check it.
Is it Italian, isn't it? Gancia?
I don't think so. No, Alberto, who sold it to us, he was Italian. But I think Gancia itself, I think it's, I mean, Alberto would be able to tell us if he was here, but he can comment on this and correct, fact check it for me.
What's it called again?
Gancia. Gancia. But Noilly Pratt was kind of the one that we had for about 8-9 years. I'm not sure what Will has in there now.
We did have for a little while La Cuesta, who's different Spanish vermouth from Mauritia had that.
It's not Spanish. It's Will got it. Alberto is both Italian and it is Italian.
There we go.
Italian man selling Italian products.
I thought we were
an authentic experience. Traditional Italian fortified wine from I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, Canelli in northwest Italy. Someone's gonna have a word with me about that one.
Alberto can comment on.
Yeah, like Alberto can be right in.
Yeah, angry and his ears are burning already. There's a huge range of vermouths out there. Like, I'm constantly surprised though, and like, I don't know about you guys, but like that for me, like over the course of me working in bars, has been an explosion. Like, you know, more vermouths coming out, especially with like the sort of no and low thing creeping in a really big way now. But like, definitely, I can't. At one point, I wouldn't even imagine seeing like a vermouth rep. But then like the Balthazar guys used to come in and see us, and they're great. You know, Regal Rogue as well. The lady who used to work for Regal Rogue was lovely, and that's a great product. And that's like a good example of something really interesting as well, because they're Australian and they're using Australian botanicals, if you know what I mean. So bringing in that whole other tradition at the moment of like seasonality and like, well, not seasonality, sorry, but locality. So yeah, I mean, vermouth was just like a bad word at one point, right? Do we all remember that?
Yeah, like I remember the first time bartending, like we had like one. So we had like, you know, like a Rosso, a Bianco, a dry, and then we had like an upsell from the Rosso. And then that was it. And then maybe like a second dry that the Lille kind of crept in and was like, ooh. And it was like, but it was really hard to sell. But now I have found like there is that market's exploding more. And I know I've noticed it more, like you said, on the last couple of years with that sort of low and no. And even when we were working together at Valentino's, it just like, there was no real need to have more vermouths because people weren't that fussy.
I think we had more sweet vermouths than we did dry vermouths, because I think people at that time knew a little bit more about Negronis than they did about martinis, and the Negroni was the big explosion at that point. So the sweet vermouths were our focus much more so than the dry. What was that, like 3 years ago?
Yeah, and I think that's been true for a little while, where it has been that sweeter side, and everyone's kind of ignored like dry and Biancos and blank vermouths, which I'm like personally a huge fan of. So now, like, mainly because I really like them, I've suddenly got more and more in for the bar, and so it's a tiny bar, but I think we've got about 8-10 different vermouths in, and just basically kind of like working through. Like, okay, cool. This works really well in this. This works really well in this. I've got to say, and I know I'm going to get crucified if anyone's going to put this in the comments.
That's what we're here for. Here for the controversy.
Like, you know what? I'm going to go controversial. I've yet to find like a dry vermouth where I was like, that is fantastic. That's a great dry vermouth. And
really?
Really, but like, it's also, I think it's everyone's like, if they go get vermouths, they're like, okay, cool, let's go to this one vermouth house and get the sweet, the dry, Bianco, get all three from the same. It all looks the same. But it's like, what? My thing's like, well, is it the best? Because they might make an amazing Rosso, but their dry is pretty average to garbage.
I mean, for sure, I've got different. My favorites are different across. There's no I'm not like this one range, and that's my brand allegiance or whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that the case down in Plymouth, Josh? Man,
I agree. I think, especially just speaking on my behalf, same as you, I don't have just one particular brand that I'm massively in love with. That they have like an amber vermouth, they've got a dry, an extra dry, and and a sweet. I really find that there's a lot of good companies out there, but maybe they're still really working on some recipes to really create that amazing core range. I think you look at, if you go back in history and look at, for example, an Italian vermouth, Martini and Rossi, they used to produce, obviously they still produce, but they were mainly produced Rosso. And then it wasn't until the 1900s that they, on New Year's Day, that they then decided to release an extra dry. And that was the first time that an Italian company started doing extra dry vermouth. So that just changes the way people look at it and start playing around with spirits.
Is there like a kind of like a cheat sheet thing that you would have? So say a customer says to you, man, like, I want a Martini and I want, we'll stick with Martini for the moment. So I was going to say like going to Martinez or something like that, but we say Martini for the moment. And they say, would you have like a cheat sheet where you're like, floral gin's going to work with this? And citrus gin is going to work with this? Or is it more for you like, because I know for me, it was a matter of like, this is actually quite a strong tasting dry vermouth. And therefore, it depends on someone's ratio. Like, so if someone's going to have like a really dry Martini, I'll use something quite flavorful, like Regal Rogue for that matter. Because if you were doing like, I don't know, 2-1 or something like that, I don't know, then that would dominate that beverage, But I don't know. I mean, like, how do you assess it? Like, how do you make a suggestion?
So obviously at Blackfriars Distillery at Refectory Bar, we only, because we make Plymouth Gin there, we only have Plymouth Gin as our main gin. But it's more of a case of actually when our guest comes into the bar, if they've never had a Martini before, it's just sitting them down and just finding out what they like. I mean, I would always suggest with the team that we usually kind of find out what they're into, but we go, look, let's maybe either start with a 2-1, see how you find that, and then if you want to go a bit more wetter, we can do like a 50-50 or reverse the measurement. So we up the vermouth and lower the gin, or if we want to go drier, we can go, right, let's go higher, let's either do a 4-1 or 5-1, or if they really want to, let's go higher and do 10 or 15, It's really just understanding. I think there's a nice entry level Martini as maybe a 2-1, and then working from there if they want to go more stronger or a little bit more lighter, or more drier or more wetter. I mean, when I'm explaining martinis to someone that's maybe never drunk a martini before, it sounds quite cliche, but so everyone drinks usually tea or coffee. And I'm always saying, imagine your vermouth is the milk. So if you're going to add more milk, you're going to get it's going to be more, more lighter. So if you're going to add more vermouth, it's going to be a lot more lighter, more refreshing. If you're going to have, put less vermouth in, your tea's going to be stronger. So if you put less, put less milk in, your tea's going to be stronger. If you put less vermouth in, you're going to get more of that drier, more of that punch note from the gin.
Love how many analogies you have. I can tell you to talk about martinis. It's like a dinner, or it's like a cup of tea.
Yeah, absolutely.
See how many we can work in throughout the course of this recording. See how many analogies.
Oh, I've got plenty more. Don't worry.
Oh my god, yes. We're gonna get a tally going. Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I know this is for everyone. How often do you order a martini yourself? I do. I order martinis all the time. It's like one of those drinks that I get the craving for.
Yeah, actually, just before lockdown, I think I went through a phase of just ordering martinis for like a month. It was all I drank for a month.
Nice.
I go through phases of it, and then Like you go through phases of just wanting a
phase.
pint, and then you don't want a pint, you want something else. Yeah, no, I was, what was I? Bone dry with loads of dart, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Jensen's. Occasionally, sometimes.
Oh, and Jensen's contractually obliged to drink Jensen's.
just throwing it in there, like, yeah. I think it's one of those things. Like I said, like I mean, like I've served all you guys, and it is one of those things where you kind of go through phases of it, like where it's just like, oh, you know what, like for ages you'd be like, oh no, all I want is like this drink, like all I'm going to drink is a daiquiri, and you do that, and then you kind of overdo it, and it's like, actually, and like someone's having a martini, it's like you have it, it's like, well, actually, hang on a second, boys, I remember you, and you just like you get on it. But I was going to say, for me personally, I can't remember the last time. No, I remember exactly the last time I ordered a
Will, you turn on that one, Will. I have no idea. Do you know what? Actually, no, I know. I remember the exact time.
I remember exactly when it was.
Remember what you were wearing?
This shirt, actually.
It's like when Kennedy got shot.
They just wheeled the TV into the room.
Oh, God.
I went through a phase of after work. It lasted for about a month before I decided that it just wasn't worth it. So we're going to Golden Pineapple, and the first drink in there, but like, Jack, can you make me like a 5-to-1 martini? Just shake it, like shake the absolute shit out of it, and give it to me. Like I want it like shake in 10 seconds as hard as you can, and I get in there like bash, have it in about 2 sips, and like, and a scooter. And that was the last time I stopped doing that, because it got. Sundays were hazy.
Quick question, not to Will, but to Josh and Tom. How did you guys feel when he said shake?
Oh, yeah.
Josh, you can take this one. I've got some points to make.
Yeah, I mean, I can go quite in depth in it. So, when Will said that, or just in general as James?
Well, let's start with how you felt with Will's martini being shaken as opposed to a Vesper.
Reaction.
The thing is, what's great is a martini can be completely versatile. So that I strongly believe there's a martini out there for everyone, even someone that doesn't like gin. I'm pretty confident that we can eventually make someone like that, because of ratios. I think it's you can really play with that to make your guest enjoy a martini. At the end of the day, you have your martini however you like. If you want to shake it, that's fine. But I do feel that as long as you're confident in your bartender, that he's going to get, or she is going to get that dilution right, then I don't think there's a problem with it, really. I mean, I've had some bad shaken martinis, but I've also had some good ones. So,
Tom, how do you feel about Will having his martini shaken?
God. Disgusted. No, actually, like I think, do you know what? I'm going to be a lot more ambivalent on this than you probably would have thought I am, because I am of a similar thinking. Like I'm very much like, however you want to drink that thing. The only time I think I have a real reaction to someone saying I want to drink this way is if someone's paying a lot for something very exclusive. So say there's like a single barrel fairly exclusive whiskey and someone wants to put Coke with it or something like that. I think in that moment it's almost
I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. I'm like, that's going to be your best whiskey and Coke you've ever had. Brilliant.
I mean, maybe the only thing is, I was like, fine. I would say, even do that with something like, I don't know, Louis Trey. Spend loads of money, but there's always going to be Louis Trey out there, right? But like, if it's a single barrel and it's like something that you could potentially be taking from someone who might enjoy it a lot more, then I think like that's the only real cause to be funny. Yeah,
but
it.
you can't say how much
I
person's going to enjoy it.
I wouldn't.
Else.
I mean, I wouldn't even mention it to the customer. But I think that sits with me a little wrong. But what I'd say about them,
you just like write it down in a little journal for the end of the night and be like,
yeah. I put it in my little hate journal. I put it in my pocket. And then I just slowly plan to see all those people in the future. No, man.
I was going to say, like, in defense of a shaken martini, I think it does have its place. Like, I mean, like, traditionally,
it's just called something different. That's it. It's called a Bradford, right? So, like, that's it. Yeah. So the idea is a martini that's been shaken. It's you'd order a Bradford, which is kind of the concept behind James Bond always saying martini shaken, not stirred, right? Because he has to specify. Because that's obviously kind of not how a martini is made. So look,
he never said that in the books.
I've seen the films, all right. Thank you for pointing out my literary ignorance.
He drank whiskey.
He drank. Didn't he drink Sazeracs at one point?
Yeah. He also drank Stingers.
Didn't Ian Fleming have to say like
he drank more Stingers than he did Martinis in the books?
He'd be too pissed to do anything. So
yeah, his number one go-to drink was bourbon, followed closely by Scotch and sodas.
There you go. But look,
he drank bourbon with something called branch water, but I don't really know what branch water is.
Maybe some sort of type of maple water or something like that. I don't know. But
we sort of digress, but we're still kind of in the right area.
We're still in the right area.
James Bond and shaken
I was just
martinis.
Going to plug was if there's any champagne houses wanting to sponsor, we will take an old James Bond champagne tour.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so that's a very specific champagne you're talking about there, Will.
Yeah. So. But I did. To be fair, I saw one of the best, not full quotes that I've seen James Bond attributed to is the Americano, and I've seen it, and it gets me every time. So I did a bit of work comparing. The Americano was a big thing we were pushing. It's it's like a Negroni, but it's low ABV. It's really good, and it is a good drink. I'm a fan of it, and they try to associate it with James Bond.
Well, he did order. He did order it in the book.
He did. And they always miss out this end bit of the quote. They're like, "Oh, James Bond's ordered we used to order Americanos," and he specifically says in the quote, it's please make it with Perrier. Like a good sparkling water is the only way to save a terrible drink. I just love the fact that that's just that's always missed out.
That's great. I think the shaken martini, like you say, trust your bartender. I think it's right. I think it's easier to fuck up. Because at the end of the day, if you're shaking something, it's always going to be a bit easy to fuck up because it's going to be, what takes 5 seconds in a shaker takes 30 seconds to stir. So, we've spoken about this maybe 3, 4, 5 times now. It keeps coming out, margin for error. So yeah, like you say, trust your bartender. If you shake it, it can be lighter and, it might be a little bit opaque or whatever, but it's going to make for a different drink. But, Tristan Stevenson says, in his book Curious Bartender, he was the author of Curious Bartender. He says that once you shake something for longer than 20 seconds, it's almost like it's reached maximum velocity. So if you shake something for 20 seconds, it's not going to get much more diluted or much colder, which I struggle to wrap my head around. But he's the man; he's obviously tested it. So I don't know. It's not so bad. But one thing that we did touch on and is super important to speak about when we were talking about martinis is how many people order martinis just because James Bond has one. Right? How many half-drank martinis have you found in one of the bars that you work in because someone kind of worked up the courage to get it and then realized, oh shit, it's just gin. and a bit of vermouth, but I'd say there's no other drink that's been popularized by something more almost other than maybe...
I think because originally, obviously, we were saying about James Bond, it was meant to be a Vesper that he drank. And then when the films came out, you found that I believe the first scene of him having a martini was the first film to Dr. No. And what happens is Dr. No, as Butler brings over this martini, but it turns out that it's a vodka martini. And he's like, vodka martini, shaken, not stirred, that's how you like it, with a lemon twist. Now, the probably reason why the films did that was to showcase at the time lots of people were drinking vodka and gin martinis, so it's quite like a trendy drink. And I believe that they wanted to show that James Bond's really trendy. I think that just relates to why people almost want to, when they go to a bar, they're like, oh, I'll have a shaken martini. I think that's more envelops into the concept.
Do you mention it? If they say that, do you say, do you want it this way, sort of thing? Would you intervene in that decision?
I mean, so for us at the bar that we're at, I mean, we, if someone's like, oh, we'd like a martini shaken, not stirred, we'll be like, absolutely. I'd be like, absolutely, it's your drink. I would recommend having it stirred, but it's up to you. Or if I say, if you want to follow in James Bond's footsteps, then perhaps have the original Vesper, and then explain what a Vesper is.
Could you explain for our listeners and watchers what a Vesper is?
Yeah, so a Vesper is basically 3 parts gin, and then to 1 part vodka, and then half a part would be Lillet, Kina Lillet. I believe the original is, it doesn't say what vodka, but I believe it's meant to be Gordon's, and then Kina Lillet and a vodka. But
he doesn't brand call vodka in the book.
Yeah.
It's the only one that he doesn't brand call in it. Yeah.
I think he
just in case it came up.
Not in the recipe for the Vesper. No, he does brand call a vodka in the books, but not for the Vesper Martini. And the Gordons at that time would have been the higher percentage, different.
So I believe it would be
now.
Yeah, I believe
40, 41.
Yeah, 41 or 42. It's basically like the airport export that it is now, I think.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of a vintage bottle that would go for.
They stopped Gordon's export a number of years ago, which used to be in a clear bottle with that yellow and green labelling on it.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my grandma used to drink that.
Yeah, so that used to be, so like obviously you knew like the people coming back from duty free, like you could see because they've got Gordon's export, and it was export strength. So really tasty, actually.
I can imagine.
So the Kina Lillet is, it's well, we know that you can't buy the version that they used in the book now, but by all accounts it was more bitter than the one we have nowadays. So I just want to throw in that when I make a Vesper, I put the rind of the lemon into the tin to shake it to get some of that bitterness.
Nice.
That's just a thing I do. But, yeah.
There's a few good ones. A Plateau crushes their olives into the martini, which is so if you order a dirty martini, they'll just kind of like crush the olives in there and like stir it with them.
Nice. It's almost like a filthy martini kind of style.
Yeah, pretty much. Because the olives that they have don't come in brine, they get really good olives and they come in oil. So it's this kind of thing where they just kind of like pat them off, kind of stamp, and they're really good. They're that kind of like buttery olive as well. So the drink that you get out of it, it's weird because I've worked there before, and it's kind of hit or miss because it's not maybe what you order when you order a dirty martini, but it is in its own right a very good drink, if you know what I mean. And I would massively suggest anyone trying it if they get the opportunity. And another one that we've kind of like danced around a little bit. I guess we've said, I don't know whether we've said it. Dirty means with olives. Twist.
We haven't said that.
Twist means with some citrus peel in there. Dry means less vermouth. Wet means more vermouth.
And Gibson with silver skin.
With silver skin, yeah.
I did just want to jump in real quick about the Lillet. Yeah, up until February this year, like I was under the impression that Kina Lillet was a product that didn't exist anymore, and she was so the BA for Lillet was down. I was chatting to her, so Claudette, her name is.
It's just Claude.
Was down. We were chatting. I was like, we're chatting Lillet. I was like, I have a question. Like after like cracking some bottles, like just chugging some Lillet at like 3 in the afternoon, it was fantastic. I was like, Kina Lillet, what is it, and why can't we get it? Essentially, she's like, it's the same. Like, it was just a massive rebranding.
Yeah, so
I was like,
what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah. So I like.
Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. It was just like it was like for a number of years. I've always believed that Kina Lillet was a defunct product. The same way that you get like a load of defunct, but it kind of goes back to what Josh was saying about it being Lillet's a Kina, to the fact that it's got quinine in rather than wormwood, and it was just a denotation to be like Lillet Kina.
Yeah, I just thought they dropped the.
I guess so. It depends.
Like, so did I. Like,
it depends on the way you think about it, though, man. Because like it would have been, I'm sure it would have been in some ways a different product back then. I mean, I will have to speak to Chloe about this and ask. I literally, honestly, I had a seminar about this the other day. If you think about,
like, I'm sure like it would have changed flavor over time, but
it's changed over time. So I think that saying, oh, you can get Kina Lillet is not necessarily saying that they went and changed the recipe when they took the Kina off. it's just going to be a different product. Like Fernet Branca's still called Fernet Branca, but if you got it from the 1970s, it's going to be a little bit different than it is today for whatever reason. So it's just, maybe it's just emblematic of the fact that there has been a change in that product over time.
I suppose also it depends on your harvest of the grapes as well. So I'm presuming for their production that they, after each year goes past, they're trying to almost replicate the same product each time with the same. Obviously, they'll have their quantities of how much they need and the varieties, but every time you grow a plant, that's going to be completely different to the one you grew last time. So the different harvests, so that even though it may be the same grape strain, it's still going to taste that a little bit different. So that's why they want to try and match it to maybe last year's production, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess anytime you're using grapes as well, like you're always going to have to have more of a problem in trying to recreate the flavor. I mean, obviously you have botanicals in something like this, as well as like fortification. But there's always going to be more of a variable there. I mean, I know we were talking about PJ, and they still have some of the product from when the brand was started, and they, I think not that long ago, had to open up one of those bottles, and they have to kind of go through the process of tasting all these kind of vintages and this wine from all the way back then, because they need to know that it still tastes like that. I mean, but you're talking now, these bottles are 100 or so, well over 100 years old, and they've just basically turned into syrup almost, I guess. But they said that it's got, very white porty, very sort of like, aged, but at the same time, you can still tell it's that like sort of Chardonnay, sort of, what's it, you wouldn't say it's kind of light, you'd say it's more like the strings, here's a nice analogy, more like the strings in an orchestra, if you know what I mean, like, those high notes. So, and that's still there. But, like I say with Lillet, I mean, I don't know whether they'd have product from all the way back then to just sort of like product match. And they are working with a raw ingredient like grapes. So, yeah, to say we can't get Quina Lillet, I get it. I think it's a misnomer in the way that we describe it. But if you could get a bottle that said Quina on it, then I'm sure it would be a different product as well. So it's a bit of Campé and a bit of Campy. I think everyone's right on this one. Which is a very nice way to round it off.
Yeah, I like that.
It's about the taking part that counts, right, guys?
Yeah, man. Everyone's right. Okay, we can stop discussing it now.
Everyone gets a medal.
Until proven wrong.
Oh, man. So,
in which case, since we rounded that off nicely, I was going to move on to like where did the Martini start? So I've switched myself to a little 5-1 with red vermouth because I really like it. Like I like it a little bit sweeter, a little bit naughty like that. So switch to that. Now I've always believed that the Martini started as the Martinez, or the Martinez is like, you've got Martinez, and it kind of evolved into the Martini, kind of split into Martini, and then split into the Manhattan. It's like this sort of, that's like the Piltdown Man, like that sort of like that missing link, but just like it splits nicely. But then you've got something like the Marguerite, which comes in, which isn't talked about that much or enough.
See, I know pretty much nothing about this. I remember you put it in there, and I thought about searching. You put it in the kind of like subjects of conversation, and I thought about searching up, and I thought, no, I'm going to embrace my ignorance on this one and just admit that I know sweet fuck all. So please do edify me.
I was going to say, like, if you do Google Marguerite, Google's just like Margarita. Like, no.
It's just going to be
that also happens at a bar a lot.
It's marked. Yeah, it's marked on my bottle that I used for the it's one of the drinks marked on that. Yeah. So, Tom, I'm going to lend this to you when all of this lockdown is over.
Clearly, I need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess really, you're quite right, Will. Where does the Martini come from? Like many cocktails and many classic cocktails, it's really hard to pinpoint where anything comes from. There's lots of theories. The only references we have are, I guess, cocktail books. So regarding the Marguerite, that was first written down in the 1900s by a man called Harry Johnson. And he wrote a book called New and Improved Bartender's Illustrated Manual. Bit of a mouthful if you've had a few martinis. That's also a good game to play. So he basically created this recipe. And it was basically It called for anisette, Plymouth Gin, French dry vermouth, and orange bitters. Now, realistically, this isn't that close to a martini, personally. But again, if you're looking at those kind of styles of drinks back then, because you're using anisette, so like an absinthe, it's almost like, I guess, like a Sazerac, you'd probably have a rinse. It'd be like a drop or a dash. Harry Johnson then decides to rewrite this recipe in 1903. And he then takes out the anisette, so takes away the absinthe, and he adds in Cointreau. Now, Cointreau, we all know, is more like an orange liqueur. So you're going to get that little bit of sweetness, but that more dryness. So we're looking at more of a drier style of drink. And again, still calls for gin, French dry vermouth, and orange bitters. He then writes a book called Stewart Fancy Drinks and How to Mix Them. And this has been written in 1904. Where he rewrites that recipe again. So it's always, I guess, with bartenders, trial and error. And he calls for 2 parts Plymouth Gin, 1 part French dry vermouth, and orange bitters, and then that's it. And that's where the Marguerite starts from. But then obviously you can look into where the history of the Martinez, because the Martinez goes all the way back to 1860, I believe.
So I heard somewhere that, and this is obviously, we're a victim of just information coming from anywhere and everywhere. And unfortunately, you're working with a combination of 2 ingredients. So chances are this is kind of happening in a lot of places, and it just didn't get popular. But then, there's probably no one moment where someone said, this is the martini. If you know what I mean, like this has never been done before. This is the kind of inception.
Yeah, I agree.
But was the Martinez, there's a plaque in California in Martinez saying this is where the martini was born, sort of thing. And there's that kind of view of things. But that's probably just capitalizing on a bit of a myth, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think with, for example, like a Marguerite, you're looking at it's a 2-to-1 ratio. Back then, that would have been more of a dry style of drink. Like anything, our palates change over time. But then we don't see the Marguerite mentioned until Harry Craddock published the Savoy, and that it was around the 1930s. So, and that's when a Marguerite's then mentioned, and then a Martini's also mentioned. But it's mentioned using a dry gin. But again, same ratios, 2-to-1. What's interesting, I guess, about the Martinez is it's known as, like you said, almost like the father of the martini. But back then, I think it was O.H. Byron published a book. I've got it written down somewhere, and it was called Bartender's Manual, or The Modern Bartender. Sorry, so that's published in 1884, and basically it states that you just swap out your gin and replace with whiskey, and then you've got a Manhattan. Now, gin back then in the 1800s would have been, it's not being put in stainless steel like it is today. It would have been put in a barrel. So therefore, if it's been shipped off, let's say, to America, we're going to lose a little bit of angel share, and we're also going to get those flavored notes of the wood come through. So that's why I can kind of see almost why it's you can just swap out a gin for a whiskey or vice versa, and you've got almost like a similar style of drink to a Manhattan. I also found that the original, or one of the original recipes in that book called for, so it's an Old Tom, so 30 ml, or it's equal parts 30 ml of Old Tom, 30 ml of sweet vermouth, dash of Angostura, and then 2 dashes of cacao as well. And it wasn't until Jerry Thomas released a recipe a few years later in 1887 where you start seeing the introduction of maraschino.
Oh, so what? Maraschino wasn't even involved originally?
Not in the original recipe, no.
Interesting.
Well, I didn't know that maraschino was in it for ages. I didn't put it in for ages, and I think it may be because whoever trained me in that particular drink had been using a very early recipe.
There could be this. There's generally this misconception when people say, I think generally when people say, "Oh, it's Martinez," there's this idea that it's a martini with red vermouth. Like that's kind of it's an easy step to make in your mind. It's like, what's a martini? What's a Martinez? It's one's with white vermouth, one's with red vermouth. But yeah, there is that little inclusion. I mean, I put bitters in mine today. because I got these lovely little sort of lavender bitters, and I just think they work well, kind of in like most strong sort of white spirit drinks. So yeah, I'm a big fan. But bitters, I mean, do you guys generally bitter or no bitter?
In a martini?
In a martini, yeah.
No,
None of them.
Not me.
Because I mean, even like, I believe it's the Connaught, where they have their martini tray or whatever. They're obviously very famous at kind of including bitters in that process and things. And I've never really seen a controversy around it, so I guess it's not like a huge bone of contention among purists, but in a bit of like.
Yeah, I just don't do it because I didn't think to do it. I may well do it because then you get something in between a traditional pink gin and not the flavoured gin, pink gin cocktail. And a martini.
Well, I wouldn't put like Angostura bitters in there, if you know what I mean. Like I'd only, maybe like orange or something like that. Yeah, I mean, give it a go.
Give it a go.
I think orange bitters have like a bashed in for that little sort of dryness before. I don't like it. Like adds that like sweetness and a little fruitiness and kind of like, especially kind of like if you've got gins that got like a nice little like sweet or citrus orange in there, like Plymouth, like you've got that nice, it kind of marries it together, and even kind of like pushes that juniper on Old Tom's. So even like with the let's think of another like the Silverback Old Tom, like an orange bitters is pretty tasty. Then even with like the Jensen's old like the Bermondsey orange bitters, again, it just I don't know, it's kind of like I think it just lifts that a little bit more.
When we talk about an Old Tom, that's a sweeter style of gin. For you guys, like I know for me, if I was ordering a dirty martini, I would never, ever, ever use an Old Tom for it. That's just me personally because I don't like the salt and the sweet together. But would you guys ever, or have you ever used an Old Tom with dart?
I have. I mean, like I'll be honest. Like in recent times, and I don't know if this is for what reason. So like for a lot of my kind of like early bartending, I smoked a lot. I was and that kind of like that kills a lot of your palate off. Like it does. So those bigger, bolder flavors you're more drawn to. When I first started bartending, I was like, oh yeah, like a big old dirty martini, I love. Now, so not so much. So like since I've given up, like it's been nearly 2 years. So it's like the palate took a strip back, but now I can taste those subtler differences in those martinis, and I do in recent times like getting more acute to it. Like I do favour like an Old Tom or a Navy strength in a dirty martini, simply because I think it gives a lot more. Where with an Old Tom, I feel as though if you don't need to put as much brine in there to get the same sort of effect, and and a similar way you don't need to put as much brine in to get a similar effect with a Navy strength as well. Kind of like that added ABV helps to kind of boost up that briny and that salty flavour. So in terms of dirty martinis, I go with an Old Tom. I do like to recommend it to people at the bar. I think that's simply because I'm like, well, if you're having a dirty martini, you like your bold flavours, you're not going to mess about. So your chances are like that salty sweet juniper, like you're probably going to be into it. You're not like it's not going to be a shock to your system, essentially.
I like flavors on top of flavors, so I go savory if I want. Well, and like I say as well, another thing is I like dirty martinis. I don't remember the last time I ordered anything other than a dirty martini. So there's a good chance that what I'm actually looking for is kind of like a salty beverage. Like, and that's why I order it so much. So like when I think, oh, I'm going to have a martini, I haven't really cognitively reframed at any point to say like, what do I want? I want something strong, clear, and refreshing. I'll have a martini. Like I probably just don't go there, if you know what I mean. But what I do go for is like, I want something savory. So I have
but would you put an Old Tom with brine?
No.
Just in your humble opinion.
No, not personally. But I wouldn't be adverse to it. Like I'm someone that likes like a big spectrum of flavors in a lot of stuff, even if it's cooking or cocktails and all these other things. Like I like things that are like sweet and savory. I like things that are like, a combination of things like sour or spicy and sweet and all of those things. So look, I don't disagree with it, but no, I would never do it. Like I say, I kind of, from that cocktail, I want flavors on top of flavors. Like gin mare. Gin mare is a great one, obviously. It's already got rosemary, it's already got olive in there, and just to bang some sort of saltiness on top of that, fantastic Kirsty's gin as well from Marbicki. another great example of something that already almost tastes a little bit savory. So I'm just going to kind of run with that. But that would be my approach anyway. But I don't think that's particularly correct in any way, shape, or form.
No, I don't think there is a correct answer. I think it depends
that's kind
on
of
your
what
own palate.
the conclusion
nice.
we've got to for most
But
most of these conversations is just do what the fuck you want. Yeah. Just do it.
I want to hear Josh's opinion on this because
me too.
we worked together for quite a while. We did a lot of our.
Don't leave him out to dry, Josh.
Yeah,
that's what he's saying. That's the tacit communication.
Did you fire him for putting olives in an Old Tom?
No, he wasn't allowed to make drinks.
Oh, you say that, but I was floor tender for a lot of the
time. No, I mean, personally, for me, I wouldn't put an Old Tom in for a dirty martini. Sorry, but I just feel that for me, if I was to have a dirty martini, I want it to be a bit more bold. I would want it very dry, and I want to get more of that gin punch coming through. I feel that an Old Tom, as much as it's delicious, because it's got that little bit more, I guess it's a bit more there's sweeter notes. I feel that it could get lost in with the brine. That's personally for me, but if a guest or a customer would like to try it, or Will can have something else.
You know what? I'm going to set on the lightweight 5-1 red martini and my dirty Old Tom martinis in rogue corner, and I'm fine with it.
Well, to be fair, once Val's opens, I'm going to come down and order both of those drinks from you.
Yeah. The conclusion of this is there's a lot of very polite ways to tell someone they're wrong. So that's just nice, isn't it? It's just nice that we're all friends here, and nobody took a particular swap. No, of course not. Like I say, there's no right and wrong. I mean, I've seen all sorts. I've seen all sorts requested as well. I mean, I think it's crazy how people don't think about how drunk they're going to get off a martini as well. You always hear those horror stories of people in America, right? They order a martini in America and just get like a vat of gin, essentially, because the measures are done so differently.
I worked in a bar once where we had a two martini limit during a night. You could drink other things, but you couldn't drink more than 2 martinis.
Makes sense.
They've got that at the Connaught,
haven't they, Josh?
They've got it at Duke's, yeah. So I don't know about Connaught, I've never been. That's on my list after lockdown. So your Duke's Bar at St. James in London. They have a 2-drink limit for their Duke's martini. So there's a lovely man there called Alessandro, and he'll wheel out a martini trolley, and he'll address you, and he'll be like, right. So we're going to make you a Duke's martini. Preferably, we do usually a dry martini. So we'll pour the vermouth into this frozen glass, swirls it around, and chucks it on the floor. Hint, that is why their carpet smells delicious. So good there. So we'll chuck that on the floor, and then he'll bring out the bottle of gin, which is ice cold, and then he'll just pour neat gin straight into the glass. But this glass is, I think, it's about 1.5, maybe 2. So you're basically drinking 2 martinis at once, and then he'll garnish with whatever you like to garnish, and then that's it. So yeah, they have a 2-drink rule, Duke's martini, but pretty delicious. If you get on well with them, you may be able to persuade them for an extra one, but you would definitely be stumbling out of there.
Josh, you mentioned rinsing the glass and throwing away the vermouth, which has reminded me of something you often hear people say, "Oh, just show it the bottle."
Yes, like Churchill.
Yeah, and that brings us on to another type of martini that we haven't mentioned, which would be a naked martini. Would you be able to give people a little bit of a rundown on what that is, please?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there's a few different terminologies with like a naked martini. So one of them is that there's no vermouth added at all. And then also referring to also your garnish. Some people prefer to have no garnish at all, which would be also known as, for example, just have my martini, this ratio, then naked, no garnish. So it's just no vermouth added. What's quite interesting to find out what everyone else thinks is when I first started bartending, I would always put the vermouth in and then stir it around and then pour a little bit out depending on the ratio. But now I believe that's almost not how it used to be done, but definitely more of a trend. And then as opposed to now, where it's definitely more focused on the ratios and it's just adding the vermouth required. So it'd be interesting to see what people's thoughts are on that, actually.
I mean, for sure, I 100% agree. You know, I was doing that for most of the first martinis I ever served, and people would always say dry as well. But it's and now it's going definitely more back to that sort of, it's 2 ingredients, you want to taste one of them sort of concept. And where martinis, it's like we say, with the rise of vermouth has been amazing, and that's just had a knock-on effect with martinis anyway, because everyone's appreciating vermouth a lot more. But I think it's very interesting about how cyclical that is, because I went to the dry martini in Barcelona recently, or I say recently, some while back, and I ordered one of their dry martinis, and now a dry martini from back then is not a dry, like that sort of dry martini now, that sort of show it the vermouth sort of thing. If you order a dry martini from the dry martini, which is that original recipe from X amount of years ago, it's actually a very wet martini. So it almost feels like we strayed away from vermouth, and now we're just kind of coming back.
Yeah, which I kind of rounds off, I guess, what I was saying with like the 2-to-1 ratio for like a marguerite. Back then, that would have been really dry. But now we've moved so far away from that, not away from that ratio, because that ratio still exists, but our palates have changed that we definitely love more of a drier. Sometimes we can have a drier martini where we can have a 10-to-1 or a 15-to-1 or naked, no vermouth at all.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think with the thing with stirring and then discarding the vermouth, for me, when I was bartending, it would very much depend on the customer, how long they'd been drinking martinis. So if it's somebody that I can ascertain has been drinking them for 20 odd years, I'm going to discard that because that's how they're used to it. But if it's somebody who's kind of new to it and they want it very dry, I'll put 5 ml in and leave it in with the gin. But for me, it depends very much on the customer and how they've asked and how they present themselves with the martini. Sort of how, I don't know if it's right to say how their personality suits the martini, but how they ask tells you a lot, I think, when you're making somebody a martini.
I think there's been so much development as well. I mean, like with all things, I mean, the same trends have really affected the martini as the bartending community, and just like bartending in general is a whole thing. You have 1-sip martinis. I talk about this all the time.
Yeah. Wow.
I love the 1-sip martini. I love Teo Elementary's take on it.
Martini's a 1-sip martini.
If you're brave enough, right? You know what I mean? No, the Teo Elementary one with that little blue cheese stuffed olive in there. It's like this whole just like little bang, one, done, easy, delicious. You have a lot of pre-batched martinis. I know Mr. Lion did that sort of olive distillate martini that came in the bottle. I maybe worked for the company that distributed it at one point, so it's great. No, but it was genuinely very good. Like and I think like you'll go to bars and they'll have their bottle of martini chilling, freezing, or not necessarily freezing, but chilling in the fridge. And if they'll just pour it out. So batchings come into it massively as well. I mean, like I say, the one thing that we keep coming back to, it's an incredibly versatile drink that can be done 1,000 different ways.
I think like a batch martini is, I think it depends on the bar. Like obviously, like if you're like a high volume bar, like I think that's fine, man. Like if you've measured it all out, you say, okay, cool. Like I've got this much gin, got this much vermouth, there's my ratios. I put this much dilution in, chuck it into the freezer. Like I know if it's a busy bar and I can get a banging martini in under a minute. Like I'm going to, like if it's just pouring like 50, 100 ml into a glass. Happy days. Like
that's it.
That's it. I know all the busy and the hard work's been done previously, so it means it's quicker for me now. And I think kind of like batching cocktails, like it's always had like this weird sort of thing to it, where it's just like it's still the same amount of work, but it's how much work you're seeing as a customer is kind of the way I look at it. It's like because if you spend like your whole Thursday day batching up everything, it means for your Friday and Saturday service, you're just okay, cool, done. And I think the same is true with martinis. Like I think especially now there has been a call to that ratio system Whereas before it was like that level of dryness. And I think that me and Josh kind of learned from the same person, martinis, and he was always just like, pour some away. But now it's just like 10-1, 5-1, 6-1. It's much easier to work with. And I think that sort of, it's a kind of like you're saying, like it's a lexicon that people who aren't maybe that confident with martinis, it's a way for them to come up and be like, actually, this is what I want.
Yeah,
and
a banging house
it a
martini.
bit better.
Yeah. I mean, I think Josh has obviously got, like, it almost seems like a little bit of a different experience because, like you're saying, you're tailoring these drinks to each individual people. But I assume you have a house martini, right?
Yeah, so we would do. I tell you what, because obviously I mentioned we just have Plymouth Gin at the bar, but we would do just like a standard 5-1 Plymouth Gin martini, and then obviously, depending on garnish, let's say the standard garnish is usually either an olive or a lemon, and up to them if in or out, or not at all. But it's more of a case of, like I mentioned, trying to find a vermouth to pair with the gin. So we would use Dolin de Chambéry just because of those beautiful pine notes that work well with the gin. So that's almost our house. I mean, we've got some great twists on the martini. We've been working with some really cool things and almost totally, I guess, bastardizing the martini as well, because that's always good fun to cause a stir, excuse the pun.
Hey.
But yeah.
Shake it up, yeah.
But yeah,
we're on fire, guys.
There's so much you can do, but yeah, we just like to have a little play around and see what we can do and get away with as well, I guess. I know we've done one where we've actually done a mint infusion, so we've infused Lillet, so we've done like a mint infusion into a martini, which debatable, is that a martini? Yes it is, but
Will's
maybe
little
not.
face is lit up with the mint infusion.
Mintini
like
is what he said. I know, I heard it under his breath. He's so proud of himself.
Thank you for recognising that, Tom.
I know. I was going to repeat it and get a bigger laugh like an asshole, but no.
I heard it, Will. I just chose to ignore it.
I think my worst one is I made a Brightini, which was yeah, I know, right? And very lovely. It was Brighton gin, but I used an artichoke brine that I made myself. So I sort of brined my own artichokes with some spices and stuff, and that was it. And I was just like, yeah, I'll call it the Brightini. And I thought,
at least you didn't call it a quarantini.
I didn't call it a quarantini, but you know what? I thought it was so lame. Yeah, I was like, oh, I can't believe I've done this. And then I got a call from the Argus, like, oh, we'd love to do a piece on the Brightini. And I was like,
wow.
And I was like, okay, more people are going to know about this. Like, I made this.
Is your favorite? Like,
I used this awful pun name, and and then do you know what the worst thing is? So I ended up writing for that magazine. Yeah, I didn't get to choose the name of the columns that I wrote for them. Do you know what they called my column in that magazine? It was called Cocktails. and it was two different words. It was hyphenated and like, I'm not putting too fine a point on it, but in a Brighton local magazine, you're reading a column called Cocktails, and like suddenly it's just a funny pun on, on like martinis and stuff. No, it was, yeah, I almost wish I'd kind of got creative control on that one. But yeah, so
but realistically, would you call it something else? Would you have actually called it something else, or just step with like low-hanging fruit?
I would have literally called the column low-hanging fruit. No, it was yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I mean, like that's so you're kind of like creating Brighton-tini. I think like
Brighton-tini.
I think like we can't talk about.
It was a Brightini.
It was a Brightini. Brighton-tini is actually kind of almost. It's almost better in how lazy it is.
But I think we can't talk so much about like the martini without kind of skirting at least on like the part of like the teeny, if you will. And it's just so yeah, that's it. So like I've had it before where I've had I had like a group of women come to the bar. I was like, oh, hey guys, like, how are you? How's your night going? They're like, yeah, really nice. It's cool. And someone like legitimately asked, it's like, what martinis do you have? It's like, like, strange way to phrase it. Like, sure, let's go with it. It was like, how do you like it? Like wet or dry? They're like, no. Like we've got like a chocolate martini, like a strawberry martini. I was like, oh, okay, sure. Like
Scrubs has a lot to answer for.
Oh yeah, that's a funny one, huh? The Appletini.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's just like my question is like, obviously, where's everyone's like kind of thoughts and opinions on like the whole sort of teeny craze? Obviously, like it was a big thing in like the early 90s where like cocktails are going to rebirth and like that sort of like third wave of bartending where you're suddenly just like you're talking about like, you know, like the pineapple teeny and those sort of things that were coming out of the Metro. It was just like it was an exciting new time, but it was just kind of like getting that term for like of teeny, basically like a sour drink just served in a martini glass.
I think that's like, it. It just became a name for a glass.
Yeah,
like that's what happened, wasn't it? It became.
It's the style of serve. Yeah, it's how it. It's this.
Yeah, what's the thing that serves it? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think because traditionally, that obviously us as bartenders would know that it's known as a V shape rather than a martini glass. But because martinis were served in it, I guess it's evolved over time to, oh, we've got to serve this drink in this glass, or therefore it's something teeny. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, the Nicanora, for example. The Nicanora that got famous from a film called, I believe it's The Tin Man, and there was two characters in there called Nick and Nora, and I think there's a few scenes of them drinking martinis from that glass, so that's why that then started to be made into almost like a martini glass.
Interesting.
And that's, especially last year, has just everyone serving in Nicanoras nearly. But yeah, I definitely think that the teeny is from almost like the V shape glass.
Yeah. That's totally it. The Nicanora thing I never knew, and I always thought it was such an unusual name for a glass as well. I can't believe I've never looked into it a little bit more. But,
I need to find out when the film was made. But yeah, it's definitely Nicanora were the main characters.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh,
funny.
Personally, back to Will's question about what we think of things being called an espresso martini or an appletini. Personally, I know I should mind because we've all done our research and we've trained and we know what things are called. But at the end of the day, I don't mind. I mean, if it means that a customer comes into my bar, orders a drink and knows that it's going to be served straight up, it's not going to be over ice. They're not expecting a different serve. If it means that they know that it's going to be served as it comes, then sure, why not?
Like if there was another drink called a martini, that would be a pain in the ass. Because obviously then forever you're asking the question. But like say, if you're just saying, nobody's like porn star martini. Okay, well I'll do gin, vermouth, and passion fruit, or something like that. There's no confusion. It's just like. So
I had confusion in Malta where people would come to the bar and go vodka martini, and I go, cool. Do you want it wet or dry? And they go wet, and I'm like, okay. Do you want a olive or a twist? They're like a twist, and I make them a wet vodka martini, serve it, and they go no. Vodka with martini.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Say the width. But yeah, vodka martini, and that was
like I can say I hit that a few times because me and Elaine worked at the same bar in Malta. And I did hit that, and I can remember your frustration over that, or just being like, just say it. Just say it. Because it would be like, so people come up and like, if it's Jack Coke. So it would just be the two things.
And
like
gin tonic.
Yeah, and it would just be it would be those things. And I still remember your frustration about that. I remember your frustration it was like a really nice little it's so loads of Pinchos. Was it like Yard 32 down on Straight Street, like the corner of Straight and like towards Milk and Honey? Mm-hmm. And like you ordering like a martini, like a gin martini, and them doing exactly the same.
But the worst thing about that was they actually got me to describe. I literally told them exactly how to make it. They asked me how I wanted it, and I didn't just tell them. I said I want 5 ml off your sweet or dry vermouth, and I want 60 ml off gin, and they still gave me 1-to-1. Needless to say, I never went back. Yeah,
it was such a sad.
It's amazing how a brand has almost their marketing campaign's so good that everyone thinks when they think, sometimes people think of martini, they mean the actual vermouth over ice with something instead of the cocktail martini. Because, I mean, I didn't realize until probably 2 years ago that it's not called Martini, it's Martini and Rossi is the actual brand. But they've just, their campaign and their marketing over the years has been so good that everyone just expects, it's so good because everyone goes, oh, well, some people I've met go, oh, well, you have to have Martini as the vermouth in your Martini. When if you look at the recipes, it's a French vermouth instead of an Italian vermouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of other brands are trying to pick up on that, especially one famous rye producer with it's a Sazerac. Sazerac. I can't name the cocktail. It's just I don't know why I was skirting around it.
I was going to say,
I know Sazerac tried to push that
brand,
for a while.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it while you can, man.
I mean, it happens with brands
it.
across the board. I mean, a vacuum cleaner is now known as a Hoover. It happens everywhere. It's not. Yeah. It's just really good marketing, I guess.
It is. Basically, this game is it's kind of like, realistically, it's kind of like trying to get into the mind of a bartender. So what's happened is the Welsh Bartending Union had a tournament to decide what the best cocktail was. What they
Hi,
did.
Welsh bartenders.
Hi, Welsh bartenders. I know actually quite a few of them. Really lovely lot. Great sort of bartending scene in Cardiff, actually. Some really great bars there. But yeah, basically, all the Welsh bartenders came together and they voted on cocktails in like a sort of tournament format in order to kind of work it down and distill it. There you go. Into sort of one cocktail right at the end. Oh, he's good. He's good.
I like that.
Oh, he's good.
It's a slow burner, Tom.
So that will grow on you, that one. So it's for an example, it'd be like Mai Tai versus Espresso Martini. And then you would vote on that. And then the winner of that will go into the next round. Okay. And then until eventually you have
what we think they voted on.
So you're trying to guess what cocktail you think the Welsh bartenders voted on out of the two. So you're trying to get it, and you're just trying to get to the end.
So we're putting our own opinions aside and focusing on what we think Welsh bartenders think.
Well, not just Welsh bartenders. I just think it's interesting because you really have to kind of tap into what bartenders are thinking, right? Because you have to A, think what's the better drink, but B, you have to think about what kind of people order that drink, and C, you have to think about how hard is it to make, or how much of a pain in the ass is it to make that drink, if you know what I mean. And so it's a combination of those three.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so I did this with Tom the other day, and I think it was like literally looking at those. It was like, well, I really like that. But if someone orders at the bar and I'm 3 deep, it's like, oh,
yeah,
you ordered that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you did pretty well, man. I'm going to say, I mean, we didn't tally it up, but I think you probably got about 80%.
Yeah, I think I did really well in the early rounds. I was like, well, clearly it's this. And then there was a few spicy ones. I was like, oh.
I think it gets trickier as it goes on. Anyway.
Did Will, Did Will claim to be Welsh at any point during the last one?
Will did not claim any Welsh heritage.
Right, okay.
Do you have, I have some Welsh heritage, actually.
Will's Welsh.
I've got some Welsh heritage.
Oh, really? Grandparents used to live in Llandwick Major. So there you go.
Well, I mean, it's like my dad's from Chepstow, which is like the least Welsh town that there is.
Well, there you go. Well, then you clearly had a leg up in this competition. Okay, guys. All right. So I'm pitching these to Josh and Elaine. Okay. Let's see how well we do. I'm gonna mark this down. So, Josh, you're here. Elaine, you're here. All right. See who wins. Okay. So the first option is what one? Pina Colada or Porn Star Martini?
That they like better.
It's not about what like better. Literally, there was no rules laid down. So you have to kind of make the decision just based on the mind of a bartender. So just say it out loud, both choose it, and I'll let you know who wins.
It's Pina Colada.
You think it's Pina Colada? Josh?
I mean, so if you're weighing up pros and cons, Pina Colada, it takes longer to make. But then lots of bartenders, not a big fan of porn stars. So I'm going to say pina colada as well.
You're going to go pina colada as well. Congratulations!
Woo.
Both got a point for the old pina colada. All right, next one: whiskey sour or espresso martini?
Whiskey sour.
You think whiskey sour? What are you going for, Josh?
Yeah, I'm going to go whiskey sour as well, I think.
You're going to go whiskey sour as well. You're both wrong. Both. Espresso martini is a great drink. Everyone loves a whiskey sour, but espresso martini.
We didn't say it wasn't a good drink. We just had to guess one or the other. Jesus.
Modern classic, mate.
That one really stumped me because it was like,
right? But I don't know. I think I voted on that one, and that's the way I voted. So yeah. Anyway, Long Island iced tea or Negroni?
Oh, Negroni.
Mm-hmm, Negroni.
Oh yeah. Okay. You got the easy win on that one. All right. Aperol Spritz or Cosmo?
Oh, I would say Aperol Spritz.
GP is higher on an Aperol Spritz. I'll go Aperol Spritz.
You go Aperol Spritz. You're both wrong. All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to count you in, and you're going to have to give your answer on 3. I think you're affecting each other a little too much here. There's a little too much conference going on. Okay.
Play your was it like Wheel of Fortune? Where it's like, oh no,
we should have had buzzers.
Yeah, you should have had buzzers.
Or you should write them down and hold them up.
No. Okay, I'm going to count you in now. Okay. So we'll know if you both get it, if you both get it wrong. All right. A Manhattan or a Caipirinha? Okay, I'll give you a moment.
Manhattan.
Okay, I'll count you in.
He was going to count us in.
God,
I'm going with
Caipirinha. I'm too eager. I want to win.
I was going with Caipirinha anyway, so I'll stick.
So you're going to go with Caipirinha, and Josh, you're going with
Manhattan. Yeah.
A Manhattan. Elaine, pulling in. Caipirinha edged that one, 100%. Okay, next one: Moscow Mule or Mojito? Okay, have a moment. Think about it. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1.
Mojito.
Mojito, yeah.
Oh, you can't wait.
Josh is bad at counting.
Yes, Mojito, you're both correct. Right, fair play. Which I'm surprised at, because I didn't go for that one, because I was like, Mojitos, they're too much of a pain in the ass.
Too much.
Yeah, exactly. Moscow Mule.
Lazy bartender, man.
Smash those out.
Easy, mate. I want people to see other customers with Moscow Mule, so they order one as well, and that just makes my whole night easier. Okay, last one.
Can you not make 4 mojitos at the same time?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I can, but who wants
to? Just do that.
Also just smashing out 4 Moscow Mules, it's the easiest thing to do. I was
going to say, man, I'd much rather make 4 Moscow.
But there's just a bit more going on with the mojito, isn't there?
It's true.
And a bit more
history. It's a classic. It's a good classic as well.
Yeah.
Okay, last one in round 1 anyway. All right, margarita or an old-fashioned? Okay. All right, I'm going to count you in. 3, 2, 1.
Margarita.
Great shout. Elaine at the end of round 1 is coming out on top a little. She's on 5. Josh is on 4. You're batting 50%, Josh.
Dude, I haven't been behind a bar in over a year as well.
This is it.
Don't make it worse.
All right, she's twisting the knife, Josh. You got to step up. Okay. Next round. Now. Okay.
Yeah.
Pina colada or espresso martini?
Okay. Yep.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Pina colada.
Espresso martini.
Oh, Josh, bringing it back to a draw. Espresso martini won on that one. Okay. Okay. Next one. Negroni or a Cosmo? All right. 3, 2, 1.
Negroni.
Cosmo.
Oh, Josh, you let her take the lead.
Damn.
Oh.
Going in Negroni. That was good. So Elaine is Elaine's ahead one at this point.
Oh, I thought.
No. Just let you get ahead on that one.
Oh, good.
Got it right, Negroni.
Oh.
Yeah, you screwed it. Sorry, that was my own presenter skills fucking up there. Okay, next one. Kind of doubling up on the cane here. Caipirinha or a Mai Tai? Okay, 2 kind of classics, totally different. It's a tough one, isn't it? This was a tough one. I think I fucked this one.
Yeah, I really deliberated over this one.
Yeah, I know you did. Okay, well, I'll put the timer on it. 3, 2, 1. Oh, Caipirinha or Mai Tai?
Caipirinha.
Oh.
What have you gone for, Josh? It's gone to pot.
Yeah, Mai Tai, I reckon.
You go Mai Tai?
Yeah.
Oh, Josh, you're bringing it back in for a draw. If we have a draw at the end of this will be a shame. Yeah, so you got it. Mai Tai. was the one there. All right, last one in round 2. All right, mojito or margarita. Okay.
Oh, that's difficult.
Oh, both ones. Both love to drink them. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Margarita.
Oh, Josh.
Margarita. Yeah.
We go margarita. Both correct.
Josh with his counting again. Whoop.
Yeah. I'm going to deduct a point, Jim.
It's my connection.
Wait, suddenly it is.
Okay, this is actually quite a tough one, man. All right. Espresso martini or Negroni? These are the semi-finals right here. Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
You know what you're going to say? All right, 3, 2, 1.
Espresso martini.
Oh, both correct. All right, cool. You're drawing here. Someone's got to do this. All right, okay. Another tough one. Mai Tai or margarita?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Okay. You ready?
I don't know this one. I don't know this one.
I'm gonna have to. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm gonna have to press you for an answer, guys.
Okay.
Right, 3,
I'm ready.
2, 1.
Margarita.
Oh man, it all comes down to this. Oh, I really hope there's a split decision at the end of this one.
Wait, were we right or wrong though?
You're both right. Right.
Okay.
Margarita in the final. But okay. So the final was. It was
the pressure, man.
Yeah, espresso martini versus margarita. This is the final.
Okay.
Oh, that's difficult.
Very different drinks, right? Very popular, delicious beverages.
Wales.
Okay.
And they had no criteria for voting at this.
I really don't think there was criteria. It was just given, and it was opened up to a whole bunch of people. I voted. I'm not even voting.
Okay.
Right, 3, 2, 1.
Margarita.
Espresso martini.
Oh my. Elaine for the win! It was a margarita! It's in the Garth Spirit Town!
Elaine.
That's it!
Well done.
Oh, the tension! Oh, it was good. Oh, I'm so glad.
Good match, Josh.
Good
match.
Well done.
Okay, just quickly, kind of winding down and does anyone have any sort of funny martini stories?
So when I was kind of newish to bartending, a gentleman came to the bar and asked me for a vodka martini, dry, and I said olive or twist, and he said yes, and I said no, sorry sir, it's an olive or a twist, which is a twist of lemon, and he said oh a lemon, and I should have known at that point, but I was new to bartending, I didn't read the situation well, so I made it how he asked for it. And he went and he sat with his very obvious first or maybe second date. And about 15 minutes later, he was queuing at the bar, waiting for me. And he said, I'm so sorry, but this just tastes of vodka. And I kind of looked at him and I went, yes, sir. And he went, no, but it just tastes of vodka. And I said, yes. And I said, have you had a vodka martini before? He said, no. And inside I was going, oh my God, why didn't you ask me about it before? But as you get more mature as a bartender, you start to spot this and you offer the advice, but I didn't know at the point. So in the end I said, I'll happily change it for you, or would you like me to? No, I said, I'll happily change it for you. And he said, well, if you can just add some lemonade or something to it. Oh. And I said, I'll tell you what, do you want me to just mix it with something else and make it into something else for you? And he said, oh yeah, that'd be fine. So I was like, so what kind of flavors do you like? And he was like, oh, I like kind of fruity, sweet flavors. So I poured it in a tin. I added pineapple juice and Chambord, and he got French martini.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's fair. That's what the man wants.
But it was, oh wow, yeah.
We've all had it so much. I found half drunk martinis strewn about the bar and things like that, and people just not expecting what they're going to get. I remember that on the flip side of things, one time I had a lychee martini on. And like I say, we've spoken about already. It's like, that it just kind of comes down to the glassware, and that's what we were serving at the time. And it was like lychee liqueur and juice and gin and lemon, I think, and stuff like that. And someone said, "Oh, can I have a lychee martini?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "And I'll have it dirty." And I was just like, "What? Why do you want olive juice in this, like, essentially what is like just juice and lychee?" I was like, "That's
Was it Will by any chance?"
You know what? Like, no, I'll stick with my red martinis and shaken martinis in this corner. And I'm quite comfortable with that, and I will go to a bar and order that, and I have. And I will after lockdown. Yeah, I mean, admittedly to my bar, but
I love your commitment. I love your commitment.
Yeah.
No, guys, fantastic. Look, just huge thank you to Joshua for joining us as well.
No, you're welcome, guys.
You know, thank you very much. Little sort of one of these,
Thank you very much for having me.
No, it's really great. It's great to have someone that's so insightful on subjects as well, and you know, great reference point. And like I say, if we ever have any more sort of martini and gin questions, it'd be amazing to speak to you again and stuff, man. But like I say, thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Also, well done on getting that hand sanitizer out there.
Oh yeah,
it was
really
good.
Cool thing to do.
Yeah. Huge thank you from everyone for that as well. And you know, obviously, massive thank you to Will and Elaine and everything as well. And just
thanks to Tom.
Thank you. That's all. I was just looking for the praise. And as always, thank you so much, Charlie, the editor, and also Drink With Us as well for putting out this content and for supporting Brighton bartenders everywhere. And if you get the chance, have a look on the website and like and subscribe on any social media platforms that you have. So thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed the show.